We'd like to welcome our friend and colleague, Senator Durbin, for being here in our committee, and we appreciate very much having you. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the terrible loss of former director of Los Alamos National Laboratory, Charles McMillan, who died in a car accident last week, and he was going to be here to testify for us today, and we're very sorry for his and his family and our deepest condolences. Charlie is a true patriot to this country who made extraordinary contributions to our nuclear weapons programs and other critical scientific missions at our national labs for over 40 years. This morning, we're here to discuss where we are and where we're going in the field of advanced computing, which touches on a wide range of technologies and applications across every one of our lives. We will also discuss legislation our members have introduced in three specific areas: artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and cybersecurity. Computing technology is advancing rapidly across the globe, and America must proceed with both ambition and caution, particularly when it comes to our national security and public safety. The DOE has a long legacy in computational science dating back to the Manhattan Project in the 1940s, which relied on computational modeling. Today, the labs currently operate the fastest two supercomputers in the entire world. The opportunities that high-performance computing provides are endless. In my state of West Virginia, it was recently announced that a new supercomputer, which is the RIA, will be installed in the city of Fairmont to improve drought, flood, and wildfire predictions and forecasting. Like during the Manhattan Project, we are now engaged in a new kind of technological race, one that requires us to innovate with slimmer urgencies and vigilance. We are watching our adversaries ramp up their investments in advanced computing technologies and even deploy them in battlefields across the world. The chart behind me, and I'm going to keep this chart up too, but I want to explain this chart for you because they went through it. It's really amazing. This is not in dollars and cents, so forget about the amount of money because we don't really have that. What we can tell you has been scientifically proven that this is the authentic things that they have done. That we know that China in artificial intelligence has 37% more in capabilities and authenticity and what they've been able to report than what we do at 13. Shows you how far we're behind. Advanced data analytics, 31% for China, 15 us. Quantum computing, we're still ahead, 34 to 15. Machine learning, China. Cybersecurity technology, China. High performance computing, we're still barely, but we're there. And then when it comes down to quantum communications, it shows you the difference. This is where we are, and we know this has been proven, and this is where they're at as far as their capacity and authenticity of what they're doing. Would you all agree on that? Okay, so we'll keep that, we'll not put that chart up over there. We're using published research paper data in place of spending because the U.S. government does not trust how China is reporting their expenditures. As the chart showed, America is at real risk of falling behind to China in this race. And it is becoming increasingly apparent that whoever leads in the development of these technologies will secure the unequivocal lead in scientific and technology innovation writ large. For the United States to maintain our position as a global leader, we must accelerate our efforts. The stakes are nothing short of economic prosperity and national security. Our national laboratories have spent decades building a workforce and infrastructure to answer the challenging questions about how to safely deploy these emerging technologies in a way that sets an example for the rest of the world. While we're proud that our private sector is making incredible strides developing and deploying advanced computing, this does not replace the need for government research and development. Complex societal challenges like advanced manufacturing, nuclear security, and genomics are a few areas of application where there is not yet an established commercial market. And this is why Senator Murkowski and I have introduced bipartisan legislation to reinforce the artificial intelligence research and development programs at our DOE labs. The bill authorizes the Frontiers in Artificial Intelligence for Science, Security, and Technology, or the FAST Act, an initiative at the Department of Energy, which will give the United States the tools to deliver secure and dependable AI solutions. This bill will create AI research and innovation hubs at our labs that will harness test beds for the development of AI platforms, develop foundational models for various applications for energy, national security, verify the safety of new large language models, and establish a risk evaluation program to respond to security risk. It is just common sense to use our nation's brain trust at our national labs and their state-of-the-art facilities that we have already built and maintained to safely advance AI while safeguarding taxpayer dollars. Industry and the science community alike have publicly supported our bill. I would like to submit for the record the supportive statements of Hewlett-Packard, AMD, Intel, ARM, Micron, and the Energy Sciences Coalition. Without objection, so be it. Let me also reiterate that America will need more energy to meet the growing demand from data centers and the manufacturing resurgence that has resulted from the bipartisan infrastructure law, CHIPS and Science Act, and Inflation Reduction Act. For decades, power demand has been decreasing, but now we are expecting a rapid turnaround this decade. But while demand is increasing, we have 2.6 million megawatts of generation waiting an average of 5 years to connect to the grid. And we're also retiring baseload and dispatchable generation faster than we can replace it. This is unacceptable. If America can't build the energy infrastructure needed to support high-tech industries, companies will choose to take their business elsewhere. We simply must get common sense policy like our bipartisan energy permitting bill enacted, or we'll have squandered this opportunity and really put ourselves at risk. Today, we'll be discussing quantum computing, which processes information much more quickly and efficiently than even our fastest supercomputers do today. Senators Durbin and Senators Daines recently introduced bipartisan legislation to reauthorize many quantum programs throughout the Department of Energy. And Senator Durbin is going to be joining us to speak briefly about his bill. And we can't discuss this new era of emerging technology development without considering cybersecurity and broader national security implications. These technologies can serve as assets, but also threats to the cybersecurity posture of the United States. We have seen the devastating effects of a cyber attack on our critical infrastructure, like the Colonial Pipeline attack in 2021 that forced the shutdown of the country's most important fuel pipeline. Last year, I joined Senator Rich in introducing the ETAC Establishment Act, which establishes the Energy Threat Analysis Center at DOE. ETAC will serve as the energy sector's centralized hub in the federal government for cyber information, sharing, threat and response to better defend the U.S. energy sector against cyber threats. We must also pay attention to how we are protecting our scientific program from nefarious actors. We will not outcompete China if they're able to just steal the technology funded by our taxpayer dollars. The CHIPS and Science Act authorized improvements to our research security policies that are already being implemented by the department. But as the threat environment becomes more complex and stakes become higher, much more must be done. During the past several months, Senator Brasso and I have been working with our colleagues on the Intelligence Committee to strengthen our research security policies to secure the science performed at our national labs while not stifling their work or closing ourselves off to the global scientific community. I'm confident this is something we can get done in this year's National Defense Authorization Act. We have a lot to cover this morning. I'm looking forward to hearing our witnesses' perspectives on specific steps that we can take to ensure America is advancing all these technologies in a competitive and a responsible manner. I know we certainly do not need to start from scratch to achieve this. Instead of duplication, we can invest smartly in emerging technologies in a cost-effective way by building upon the resources that we already have at the DOE labs and its national presence. This is how we will maintain our global lead in scientific innovation. And with that, I'm going to turn to my colleague and friend, Senator Brasso, for his opening remarks.
Well said, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding today's very important hearing. Research into advanced computing is critical to maintaining America's economic growth, our national security, and our leadership in the world. The Department of Energy, through its network of 17 national labs, plays a very key role in all of those innovations. The department has some of the most advanced computing systems in the world. In fact, the department has the world's 2 fastest supercomputers and a 3rd supercomputer among the world's top 10. These systems have pioneered advances in artificial intelligence and in quantum computing. These are 2 fields that the People's Republic of China does seek to dominate. For this reason, China is watching nearly every move that our national labs make. Our labs are under constant surveillance by a branch of China's intelligence network that focuses on science and technology. This branch alone consists of about 100,000 agents. Beginning under Chairman Mao, this intelligence network has supported the development of China's nuclear weapons, its missile, and its satellite programs. And its mission remains the same today: target foreign technologies useful to the Chinese communist regime and acquire them by any means possible. America's open research environment is the envy of the world. It has fostered our greatest scientific achievements. Yet it is a rich target for China and other adversaries. As stated by the National Academy of Sciences, the integrity of research is based on the values of objectivity, honesty, openness, fairness, accountability, and stewardship. Contrast this with the view of China's President Xi Jinping. He recently described science and technology development as a contest to be won. He stated, "The initiatives of innovation and development must be secretly kept in our own hands, and whoever holds the key to innovation makes an offensive move," he said, "in this chess game, and will be able to take the lead and win the advantage." A 2022 report titled "The Los Alamos Club" by Strider Technologies is telling. I have a copy of the report here, Mr. Chairman. It says between 1987 and 2021, the Chinese Communist Party targeted over 160 Chinese nationals working at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Upon returning to China, these researchers helped then advance key military technologies using knowledge financed by us, by the American taxpayers. Today, thousands of non-U.S. resident Chinese nationals still work at our national labs. And I believe the majority of these foreign nationals strive to further scientific innovation and collaborate in good faith. Make no mistake, they are beholden to an authoritarian regime, and the Chinese Communist Party is ruthless. Some of these Chinese nationals will see no other choice but to support the Chinese Communist Party through theft of American research and technology, because if they don't comply, their families back in China may be punished. Others will be tempted through bribery. Earlier this year, a Chinese national and former software engineer at Google was arrested for stealing on behalf of a Chinese firm, which was paying him secretly. The U.S. Justice Department has charged this individual with stealing software used to orchestrate Google's supercomputers at the cutting edge of machine learning and AI technology. In 2020, Congress required the Department of Energy to devise a study of counterintelligence efforts at our national labs. The department hired MITRE, a government contractor, to conduct this study. In April of 2023, MITRE produced an unclassified report. Upon receiving the report, the Secretary of Energy then decided to classify it. The Secretary reassigned the Director of the Department's Office of Intelligence and Counterintelligence without an explanation. I have asked the Department to declassify the MITRE report and for the Department to come clean with the American people. The U.S. Department of Energy has refused. One can draw many different conclusions from the Department's stonewalling. The Department may simply want to hide its failures from the public, but whatever the reason, it is clear that the Department of Energy and our national labs have failed to take the China threat seriously. Mr. Chairman, we can't let our research and technology fall into the hands of China's brutal dictatorship. The Department must dramatically increase its efforts to protect our research from our adversaries. And Congress must step in if the Department fails to do its job. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for calling this important hearing, and I look forward to today's testimony.
Thank you, Senator. Now we'll turn to our friend and colleague, Senator Durbin.
You want Senator Masto first?
No, we'll go to, after you, then we're going to go to the witnesses, unless you want to.
I'm going to be very brief. Thank you, Chairman Manchin and Ranking Member Barrasso, for this opportunity, and to all the members of the committee. I won't sit before you today and pretend I am Nobel Prize material for science or engineering. I'm just a liberal arts lawyer. However, there are brilliant scientists in my home state of Illinois. They've given me a crash course in quantum computing. I visited Illinois' two national labs, Argonne and Fermi, many times and seen their extraordinary work. In this past summer, Argonne's Aurora supercomputer achieved exascale computing speeds, landing at the top spot among the most powerful supercomputers in the world. Achievements like this are why more than a decade ago I founded the Senate National Labs Caucus, along with Senator Risch. It's why I work with so many of you in this committee to support the Department of Energy's Office of Science. The fact is, when America invests in science, we lead the world, and nowhere is this truer than in advanced computing. I want to say parenthetically, thank you to Senator Manchin and Barrasso for talking about competition with China. It should be a focal point every single day for all of us. I think for a moment, and I know Senator Barrasso is an amateur historian himself, it was in my lifetime that ping pong diplomacy took place. This primitive, backward, oxen-driven economy in China in 50 years emerged as a world competitor to the United States of America, and that's why we're meeting today to discuss it. Senator Daines and I have introduced a bill called the Department of Energy Quantum Leadership Act, reauthorizing quantum research and development activities across DOE, expanding DOE quantum research centers, tackling supply chain and prototype challenges in the private sector, and expanding, training programs for quantum workforce. This is timely, it's important, it's before this committee. I urge you to enact it as quickly as possible, and let's get it passed.
Thank you, Senator, so much. And I would say to all of our members that we would, I think as a committee, share this and keep updating it to show every legislative member, 535, exactly where we stand. And if we don't start acting in unity, we're not going to be able to catch up or excel. So I think this is a stark reminder of where we are, and this is very accurate, very factual. I think that you all would agree that we pulled these out of basically what you all have looked at and said this is where they are and this is where we are. So we want people to understand that. So we'll be sharing that without any objection from the committee. And with that, Senator, we appreciate you coming in, sharing your thoughts. At this time, we're going to turn to our panel of witnesses. We have Ms. Helena Fu, Director of the Office of Critical and Emerging Technologies at the Department of Energy. We have Dr. Shaun Gleason, who is Director of Science Security Initiative Integration at Oak Ridge National Laboratories. And we have Dr. Kaushik, Senior Fellow American Policy Ventures. And with that, we'll start with Ms. Fu.
Thank you so much. Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Barrasso, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify about the Department of Energy's leadership in advanced computing research, in its application, and cybersecurity. I want to start by thanking this committee for your strong support of DOE for many years. My name is Helena Fu. I serve as the director of the DOE Office of Critical and Emerging Technologies. My office coordinates across the Department of Energy and its 17 national laboratories in artificial intelligence, biotechnology, microelectronics, and quantum information science. Since its origins from the Manhattan Project, the entire Department of Energy complex has been working at the frontier of science, driving advances central to America's prosperity and security. Two of the most critical scientific frontiers that we currently face are artificial intelligence and quantum information science. And today we all see the transformative potential of AI. DOE and its national labs have long invested in AI and its applications. And in addition, DOE is the leading generator of classified and unclassified scientific data through the world's largest collection of scientific experimental facilities. We build and operate in deep partnership with industry, the world's fastest and most powerful supercomputers that are both strategic assets and serve the scientific community. Our proposed Frontiers in AI for Science, Security, and Technology initiative, or FAST, seeks to harness this infrastructure at DOE to deliver a step change in capability for the nation, to develop AI-ready data, to advance the next generation of frontier-scale compute platforms. And building on this data and compute, we need to develop models that deeply understand science, math, physics, chemistry, and we need to apply these models to solve our most pressing challenges in discovery science, in applied energy, and in national security. Beyond AI, quantum could help unlock new forms of computing and information processing, and the National Quantum Information Act authorized DOE's 5 national QIS research centers. DOE is making strides in the science that could help unlock quantum's potential in computing, in simulation, in networking, and in sensing. We've created a first-of-a-kind quantum computing user access program, created testbeds and foundries, built underground facilities to characterize devices. These investments are helping to build up the quantum ecosystem in the United States, where we're working across 115 institutions, 24 states, with trusted international partners and with other parts of the interagency. DOE is also making strategic investments in quantum computing to address nuclear security challenges, and we're exploring potential applications to our energy mission. A resilient and secure power grid underpins and enables U.S. leadership in AI and quantum, and DOE is continuing to strengthen the energy sector's cyber defenses and invest in new capabilities, such as the Energy Threat Analysis Center, or ETAC. The ETAC pilot brings experts from government and from industry together to address the growing cyber threats to U.S. electricity, oil, and natural gas systems. The ETAC pilot has been instrumental in rapidly addressing cyber threats, such as the PRC-sponsored Volt Typhoon activity. On a solemn note, I'd like to recognize the life of Dr. Charlie McMillan, who passed away unexpectedly last week. For 35 years, Charlie worked at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and as director of Los Alamos National Laboratory. He had recently come out of retirement to work with me and our labs on our AI initiative because he saw how important this was. We and the entire DOE community feel this loss keenly, and our hearts go out to Charlie's family and friends. We are at an inflection point in AI and in quantum and cyber. The DOE, with its dedicated scientific workforce, 40,000 strong, our ability to drive mission science through deep partnerships, the ability to work across the entire ecosystem from discovery science to applied energy to national security, we stand ready to do our part. I want to thank the committee for its ongoing and bipartisan support for the DOE mission, and we look forward to working with all of you. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fu. And now we have Dr. Gleason.
Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Barrasso, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Shaun Gleason. I am currently the director of the Science Security Initiative Integration at the U.S. Department of Energy's Oak Ridge National Laboratory, or ORNL, in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where I have 35 years of service. I serve as a liaison between the open science and national security mission communities, and am specifically focused on emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, or AI, quantum science, cybersecurity, and high-performance computing across the diverse mission areas of ORNL. I'm also an entrepreneur who founded a startup company that successfully transitioned a medical imaging technology to the market. There are grand challenges where we must accelerate progress to ensure continued U.S. leadership in the emerging technologies of quantum, cyber, and AI. For example, in AI, energy efficiency is a grand challenge, as many are predicting that energy use by AI-driven data centers will approach 10% of U.S. energy demand by 2030. While energy-efficient AI is crucial, we also need our AI systems to be safe, secure, and trustworthy. For quantum, a primary grand challenge is the ability to create reliable and affordable quantum devices that are the building blocks for quantum computers. Another grand challenge is creating a quantum internet that can reliably and securely share quantum information with many different devices over long distances. Cybersecurity is a grand challenge arms race, where every defensive move inspires an adversary's offensive move and vice versa. Protecting U.S. critical infrastructure, such as the electric grid from cyber attacks, requires regional public-private partnerships and real-world cyber testbeds that are connected to a national information coordination network. Some of the most exciting and critical areas for revolutionary innovations are where the fields of AI, cybersecurity, and quantum intersect with one another. In the fields of cybersecurity and AI is being used to create dynamic, self-learning cyber defense tools that can adapt to the rapidly changing cyber attacks against our nation's infrastructure. AI systems themselves are uniquely vulnerable to a variety of cyber attacks that can manipulate AI into making decisions favorable to an adversary. Adversaries can create public websites filled with disinformation that are automatically scraped for data that can bias an AI model during training. To combat cyber attacks on AI systems, several of the DOE national labs, including ORNL, Los Alamos, Pacific Northwest, and Lawrence Livermore, have created internal organizations to develop cybersecurity methods specifically for the defense of AI systems. The discoveries being made at the intersection of AI and quantum are also powerful, and the scientific community is only scratching the surface. For example, AI is being leveraged to accelerate the development of quantum computers by accelerating the discovery of new quantum materials and generating new types of error-correcting codes for quantum computers. Conversely, quantum computers are being used to speed up AI model training algorithms and to generate realistic simulated data that can be used to train data-hungry AI models. Additional research is needed to capitalize on these opportunities. DOE's national laboratories are also home to powerful experimental facilities that are made available to universities, industry, and other government agencies to conduct cutting-edge research. Thanks to investments by Congress through DOE's Office of Science and the National Nuclear Security Administration, the national labs have deployed the first open science exascale computers. Frontier at Oak Ridge National Lab, Aurora at Argonne, and later this year, El Capitan at Lawrence Livermore. The combination of world-class talent, computing, and experimental facilities positions DOE to lead in AI, quantum, and cybersecurity research. Exemplifying the value of partnerships in quantum, ORNL is currently performing quantum-based secure communication experiments in collaboration with the Electric Power Board in Chattanooga and the University of Tennessee in Chattanooga on their commercial quantum network. To maintain U.S. leadership in AI, public-private partnerships are also critical. For example, ORNL recently partnered with Advanced Micro Devices and Microsoft to develop software that can train a 1 trillion parameter AI model on the Frontier supercomputer. In summary, the grand challenges before us motivate partnerships across the government, the DOE National Laboratory System, industry, and academia to accelerate the pace of innovation. DOE has demonstrated its commitment to advancing research and technology transitions across all three of these important areas while trying to balance associated risks. Thank you once again for the opportunity to testify, and I welcome any questions you have on these important topics.
Thank you, Doctor. And now we have Dr. Kaushik. I must pronounce that correct, Kaushik?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, Kaushik.
Kaushik. Thank you, sir. And I think I promoted Ms. Fu to a doctor, and I'm sure she's capable of that very, very much so, but not quite yet. I'm a little bit early on that one. Okay.
She is smarter than I am, for sure.
Okay.
Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Barrasso, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. We are at a critical juncture in technological history. The People's Republic of China, the PRC, is in an intense competition with the United States, aiming to dominate advanced computing and AI by 2030. Over the past 7 years, they have increased their R&D budgets by 10% annually, while engaging in sophisticated espionage efforts to acquire technology. This is not just economic competition. It is a strategic effort to reshape the global order. The Department of Energy and its network of 17 national laboratories and 35 user facilities are our technological vanguard. These institutions have consistently delivered innovations underpinning American leadership, from clean rooms to platforms driving key industries today. The DOE Lab's potential to drive AI innovation is enormous, with applications for national security, energy, and scientific advancement. These breakthroughs, powered by DOE's supercomputing capabilities, could revolutionize areas like material sciences, molecular dynamics, and power grid resilience. This necessitates a multifaceted approach. We must enhance the security of our national lab facilities. We must maximize their operational and scientific capabilities, and we must implement strategic initiatives to attract and retain the talent that wants to come here while removing those who seek to exploit our system. We must foster an environment where our scientists and engineers are encouraged to think big, push the boundaries of innovation, and be confident that their groundbreaking research is safeguarded against foreign exploitation. The PRC has explicitly held up U.S. national laboratories as models to emulate in their 5-year plans, stating in their 13th five-year plan, and I quote, "National laboratories have become key platforms for major developed countries to seize the high ground in technological innovation. For instance, the Argonne, Los Alamos, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratories in the United States are all research bases focused on national missions. It is urgently needed to focus on national goals and strategic needs, target international technological frontiers, and establish a group of larger scale interdisciplinary and integrative national laboratories, end quote. This is a direct quote from their 5-year plan. Xi Jinping has since announced the creation of their own national laboratories that are explicitly designed to mimic and ultimately surpass our DOE complex. While imitation may be the sincerest form of flattery, in this context, it serves as a stark reminder of the value and the vulnerability of our national laboratories. The PRC's efforts to surpass our labs and capitalize on their advancements highlights the pressing need for a comprehensive approach to research security that preserves our competitive edge. The bottom line is that the PRC is pursuing an aggressive campaign of technological advancement that relies on both aggressively investing in their own R&D ecosystem and illicitly acquiring intellectual property. Furthermore, their strategy integrates civilian research with military applications, as evidenced by statements from top Chinese academic institutions, including Tsinghua University, commonly referred to as their MIT. This goes beyond normal competition. It represents a coordinated effort to challenge America's innovation leadership and reshape the global technological landscape in Beijing's authoritarian image. The PRC's legal framework further complicates this picture. Laws such as the 2017 National Intelligence Law compel Chinese citizens and organizations to, quote, support, assist, and cooperate with state intelligence work, end quote. This means that even well-intentioned PRC researchers may be legally obligated to share information with their government, regardless of any commitments made to US institutions. Let me be clear, research security is not about stifling innovation or closing our doors to the world. It is not about and cannot be about targeting individuals based on their ethnicity. It is simply about ensuring that our openness is not exploited to our detriment by our adversaries. The DOE's national laboratories have long been a shining beacon for scientists and researchers worldwide. This is an asymmetric advantage that we have. This global appeal is not just a point of pride, it is a cornerstone of our technological leadership. For instance, 59% of top-tier AI researchers work in the United States, but only about 20% of them got their undergraduate degrees here. Our nation's commitment to freedom, to free speech, to freedom of inquiry, innovation, and scientific excellence has made us the destination of choice for the world's brightest minds. We can and must maintain our leadership in scientific collaboration, but on terms that protect our national interests. We passed several laws. Effective implementation of these remains key, whether it be the research security provisions in CHIPS or in NSPM 33. The path that I've laid out today is undoubtedly challenging and will require sustained commitment and vigilant oversight. However, the alternative, a world where the PRC dictates the rules for transformative technologies, is simply not an option that we can entertain. There's much more that I could say on these matters, but I trust that we'll cover them more fully over the course of this hearing. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Now we're going to begin our questions, and I'll begin. And it's a pretty, this is for all three of you to think about, but we as senators, Democrat and Republicans, are looking at basically people coming at us, whether it be the CHIPS Act, how we divide our money up, and this and that. I don't want to reinvent the wheel, okay? And I don't want to split the baby. The bottom line is you do what you do. NSF should do what they do. And for some reason, there's whoever has what in their state, it seems what things are happening right now. I like to make sure that we're not making that mistake and going down a path where you don't have the ability to make up the differences that we're lacking behind right now. So if you can, and this is not disparaging anything in NSF, they have so much expertise in certain areas. But in the CHIPS Act, and what we've done there, you already have the computing expertise. You already have the investment in the supercomputers and quantum computing and all that. Why would we basically try to reinvent the baby again, the wheel, if you will? So would you all speak in comparison of what you think each one of you all do with our labs versus NSF, and how we can direct more of our attention to make sure that both of you all can meet your full potential? You want to start, Ms. Fu, with you?
Sure, I'm happy to speak on this because there's been a lot of discussion in the AI policy.
It makes sense, but I'm asking you, what we're trying to...
Of course, yes. NSF obviously plays an extremely important role in the nation's ecosystem. It is focused on workforce development, it's focused on training, it's focused on providing grants to research institutions all across the country. And that's incredibly important, and we need that. DOE's focus is a capability organization. We're a mission-driven R&D agency that is focused on science at scale to solve complex challenges that only can be done by big team science. And so we also work very closely with universities across the country, but we're focused on specific problem sets that we're trying to address. And so I think that the roles of NSF and DOE are actually quite complementary, because the NSF funds researchers that then become part of the AI ecosystem that can come be part of the workforce that is going to help drive the frontier. But ultimately, we do play very, very different roles in the AI ecosystem and the innovation ecosystem.
Not to put you on the spot, but did we direct through the CHIPS Act investments towards NSF that basically is trying to recreate what you're already doing?
Well, they're certainly working on the National AI Research Resource. And I will say on that, because we recognize the importance of access to compute, I will say this. DOE's supercomputers have been open to the research community. We leaned in and extended the life of Summit supercomputer at Oak Ridge National Lab, and also provided access to test beds through the NAIR pilot. So we're working very closely with NSF in this endeavor.
You don't feel that competition that's one's taking away? We could do even more if it was directed to what we do and what our expertise is versus trying to duplicate that.
I'll say
I'm asking you pretty.
We are playing our part in the ecosystem, and I firmly believe they're very, very complementary.
Yeah. Dr. Gleason, you want to comment on this? It's not the easiest. I'm putting you in a spot, I know that. But what we're trying to do, I think all of us trying to make sure, have we used our dollars, the taxpayer dollars, the most efficient and effective way possible, and have NSF do what they do best, and let you do what you do best, but not trying to overlap each other because you're competition?
So this it's a very good question. I would echo a lot of what Helena said about complementary roles and responsibilities. Maybe saying the same thing just a little bit differently from my perspective as a leader of scientists at Oak Ridge National Laboratory is that NSF is about access to software infrastructure tools for the masses, for universities, students, et cetera, to have access to artificial intelligence and computational power, to try out new methods, new algorithms, evaluate new software and tools. Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the lab system really provides world-leading capabilities and world-leading science and technology input to that. So for example, we, as Helena mentioned, we provide the Summit supercomputer as part of the NAIR effort. We've had lots of people sign up to use that as part of the NAIR program, and we help them achieve their science and technology objectives because we have subject matter expertise that we can put alongside them. How do you use a supercomputer? What's the scientific area that you're trying to make discoveries in? We have experts in those spaces that we can line up with them and help them achieve their science and technology objectives. So that's a differentiator, and we rely heavily on NSF for workforce development, new students, training, that we can, hopefully some of those will come to the national labs and contribute at some point.
Sounds like you all are doing better than we are working together.
I agree.
And Doctor, if you could comment on this.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that they've said, but I would point out one other thing. I think NSF's focus is more on foundational research, on basic research, where we do not have near-term applications, or we do not know. It's about exploring the unknown, where DOE, they're trying to supercharge the capabilities we have to get things out there, to take an aim at moonshots. And I think that is very critical for our national security enterprise, and the critical role, one of the differentiators between DOE and NSF is the role DOE labs play in furthering our national security, all the NNSA labs in furthering our national security, versus the more fundamental science that NSF tries to invest in.
Thank you all. We have enough. We'll go for 7 minutes, okay, each one. We give you a little bit more time since we have other senators or so many different committee meetings. My main thing is on power, too, because I know it's going to take an awful lot of power to generate this. I am concerned. We've seen over 90 gigawatts of coal power retired in the last decade. That's dispatchable 24/7 power, gone. And we could see twice as much dispatchable capacity retire over the next decade on the path that we've been heading down historically. It can't be more clearly demonstrated than PJM's recent assessment that 40 gigawatts of existing generation are at risk of retirement by 2030. Yet only 30 gigawatts of equivalent capacity are projected added. Take that in comparison. China is bringing on 90 gigawatts online every 2 years of dispatchable power. And this whole environment, we're all responsible, but we have to understand what we're dealing with. And I don't know if any of you want to comment on that, and if you've raised the concern that we're not going to be able to energize these data centers to compete just as quickly as you can.
This is a focus for the department. We understand the implications of having enough power to power both manufacturing that's coming back to the United States, electrification of the grid, as well as the data centers and the AI that is going to be needed to train those models in the United States. The Secretary, the entire department is very focused on this issue. We just recently issued a new website, a new hub for folks who want to work with us on these issues. I will say this. There are new technologies and new tools that we have available, grants, tax credits, loans, technical assistance that we're bringing to bear on this particular issue. Our Lawrence Berkeley National Lab is also working on a study that's looking at energy efficiency in data centers. And then I will also point to the work that we were able to do in the exascale computing project.
You're all in different grid zones. Are you concerned about the grid being able to be reliable, the grid that you're in?
We absolutely need to make sure that the grid is resilient, that it's able to manage the load.
Are you all evaluating that and monitoring your grid?
We are focused on this issue, especially as it relates to data center energy growth.
Most of you are in PJM, as far as the dispatchable, where our power is, PJM system. I'm just saying, I just think we're heading for a real calamity here. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I'm happy to, Senator. Just one of the things that we have to understand. The reality is, over the last 6 years, the computational needs of AI systems have grown a millionfold. Like from GPT-1 to ChatGPT-4, the computational needs have grown a millionfold. The parameters have grown a millionfold. Now, since 2010, we've seen that the number of the computation that we are putting towards AI models is doubling every 6 months. And there's no reason to believe that that's going to slow down anytime soon. I think there was a recent Bloomberg article that it is taking about 7 years delay for a completed data center that would require 100 megawatts or more of energy to be connected to the grid in Virginia. And I think those statistics should raise some alarm amongst us. And I think to what Helena pointed out, I think those tools are great, but we would need further action, probably something, not just about how we are providing loans and financing to data center companies or utility companies, but what are we doing in terms of energy efficient AI? What are we doing in terms of making sure that data centers can come online, whether it's in the long term where we are building those data centers in the United States, but in the near term, how can we make sure that those data centers are not going to countries which are using Huawei infrastructure, but are using American hardware? And so I think those are important questions for us to address. And I think the action that this committee has taken on permitting will have a big impact on that, but we need more.
Gotcha. Senator Barrasso.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Let me stick with you, if I could, Mr. Kaushik. Dr. Kaushik, you're an expert on China's science and technology policy. What unique threats does China pose to government-funded research and development of critical and emergence technologies?
I think, Senator, the answer is very clear. They have a targeted effort that we call the civil-military fusion, where even their universities have put out statements saying that all the basic foundational research that they do is towards military gain. Every IP theft case that we've seen, every espionage concern that we've seen, I think all of that is ultimately feeding into their military complex. Now, that plus their legal situation with the national intelligence law or the national cybersecurity law, and all those things are making it more complicated for Chinese researchers to be able to actually act in good faith. Because no matter what commitments they make to US institutions, they're required by law to share all that information with the Chinese government. And I think when they are trying to go after our technology, as you mentioned with regards to a recent espionage case where a researcher was charged regarding data center plans, I think they're going after that cutting edge technology. They cannot independently replicate it. And so they want to like steal our IP and build it there in short term to be able to catch up. These numbers are not just a mere reflection of their investments in R&D. These are also a reflection of how they've exploited our open system.
Ms. Fu, he talked about the targeted researcher for military activities, and if you follow the long history of Chairman Mao, his efforts when he was on Stalin's payroll was to try to get the nuclear weapons, and they fast-forwarded technology to him. When Stalin was attacked during World War II, his goal was to try to work with the United States to get, when the nuclear weapons then became forth, when he thought that Stalin was at risk. I mean, all of the issues have been a militarization of China. So, in 2020, the Hoover Institute released a 169-page report. I know you're familiar with it. It's titled Global Engagement, Rethinking Risk in the Research Enterprise. The report states that a group of universities in China known as the Seven Sons of National Defense, he's tying this into the military, operates as a prime pathway for harvesting U.S. research and diverting it to military applications. Can you please explain why the department still collaborates with researchers at the Seven Sons of National Defense?
So I'll say research security is an issue that I have long thought about, and the department has been extremely focused on since the Manhattan Project. I personally worked on research security policy in the last administration at the Office of Science and Technology Policy. So this is an area that is critically important for our continued national competitiveness. DOE, as a government agency, we do not have any bilateral ongoing cooperation with Seven Sons institutions. We are aware and very clear-eyed about the risks of China's military civil fusion policies, and that's why we have a managed research environment within the fence lines at the DOE National Labs when it comes to our science and technology risk matrix, the foreign national access screenings that we do, as well as our ban on foreign government-sponsored talent recruitment plan participation.
So Dr. Kaushik, you mentioned the Seven Sons of National Defense in your testimony. What's your opinion? Should the department just cut all ties along these lines, or is there further?
Certainly. I think no researcher being funded by any taxpayer dollars should be collaborating with any researcher at Seven Sons of National Defense.
So what are several things that the Department of Energy could do better to protect advanced computing research?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I think there are a lot of things that the DOE has been doing that are ahead of the curve compared to other agencies, and in fact, have to give them credit for that. The recently released implementation guidance for the National Security Presidential Memorandum 33 by the OSTP, DOE is already implementing things that are ahead of that. Now, what more can we be doing? And I think this doesn't just apply to DOE, but like broader research ecosystem. I think we need to increase transparency here, right? We must be more forthright with the researchers about the concrete risks to our national security. Currently, we just often present like vague warnings or hypothetical scenarios of illicit technological transfer, which is insufficient to convey the gravity of the situation. These are researchers and scientists. These are generally well-intentioned people who are analytical, who want to see more evidence to be able to see what the stakes are. And I think, for example, I'll give you the MD Anderson case, which was about the NIH. They provided a clear example of security breach where an email explicitly directed the transfer of privileged information. And that letter was published openly. So I think such concrete examples are more persuasive than generalities. The other thing I would say is we need to clearly delineate basic research environments, or research environments more generally, right? We need to reassess the classification of basic research. We need to establish clearer boundaries between open and secure environments. Now, for example, in the Air Force Research Lab in Rome, they have a facility outside the gate to interact with universities and others, whereas everything behind the gate is doing secure research. Now, DOE does a lot of that at a lot of labs, but that needs to be the practice. That needs to be the norm. It is not clear to me why NSF-funded hypersonics research, for instance, is considered basic research. I would be all for having basic research open if it was truly basic research. But that is not basic, and I think that is something that we need to clarify. And then I would say that very specific to DOE, we need to strengthen the protection of commercially relevant technologies. Now, a critical area that requires our attention is this protection of research that is conducted in partnership with commercial entities. National labs and universities frequently engage in projects with significant commercial value through mechanisms like strategic partnership opportunities or user facilities agreements. Now, current policies, whether it be the NSPM 33 or even the CHIPS Act, they do not adequately address the security concerns associated with these public-private partnerships. We need to develop more comprehensive guidelines and authorities to manage these partnerships effectively to ensure proper safeguards there. And I think this, again, extends beyond DOE facilities, but also to universities that are collaborating with major technology and pharmaceutical companies.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired. I just wanted to comment on the last question you asked about the disposable power.
Right.
And, dispatchable power. The magazine The Economist says that kind of since the Paris Climate Accord has taken down, the U.S. has taken down about 150 gigawatts of coal-related power. China and India, 250 more gigawatts on. Why do they need it? Because of the technology, the AI, all of those things. New York Times says 5 years from now, the amount of energy that we're going to need in this country is equal to adding an entire new California to the grid. Why? Because of this very reason. So we seem to be woefully behind in our ability to produce the power that we're going to need and are taking down right now power that can be used and needed because of the attacks from the environmental communities. But we need to be very clear-eyed about what's happening globally and what China's trying to do in terms of trying to become the military, the economic, and the technological superpower of the world. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
First, let me thank each of you for your service and being involved in this. Mr. Chair, I appreciate you for calling this meeting. Let me start, Dr. Kaushik. AI obviously can improve efficiency and reliability of our electric grid, predicting, managing supply and demand. While we work towards that goal, however, the National Electric Reliability Corporation, as well as the Brattle Group, projected, as we've just been discussing, significant increases in demand on the grid, in part from data centers that are training and running these AI systems. So, Dr. Kaushik, how much do we know and what more information do we need about what our benefit is here? In other words, how much more electricity will AI and these emerging technologies require, and how can we begin to estimate the benefits and the savings in energy that they will provide us?
Thank you, Senator. I think predicting this future demand is going to be challenging, one, because we don't have the insights into proprietary plans of companies for training new models, or sometimes they have speculative, unfulfilled requests for new capabilities from data center vendors. But what we do know is that the International Energy Agency has predicted that the electricity demand for data centers will double by 2026, the global demand. And I think that even if it does not double, even if it is just increasing by 10%, we cannot take that risk. We need to be prepared for that.
Right.
I think as Dr. Gleason mentioned, that there are some reports that predict that 10% of global energy usage will be by AI data centers. I think we have to reduce that uncertainty, and that I believe DOE is already working on that as part of a mandate they have from the Energy Act of 2020. But I think overall, the facts of the matter on the ground are that in your home state, for instance, in Colorado, a hyperscaler recently invested in geothermal energy west of the Rockies. I think private sector is seeing this, and they're like, we need to invest in the capabilities. Just this week, Oracle's earnings call, they shared that they are going to build a 1 gigawatt data center, and they've started the process on that. And these are things that companies are actually investing in. And I think that is a clear signal for why we need to be prepared. Now, what needs to happen to reduce that uncertainty? I think AI, for instance, can help there. We have all these earnings reports coming out. We have all these announcements from companies. We have the GIS data. we can use that to better reduce our uncertainty on how much power demand will be in particular regions. It may not be an issue nationally, but it is certainly creating strain on particular regions like Northern Virginia, for instance.
A lot of regions. I agree completely. Ms. Fu, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, NIST, has established the U.S. AI Safety Institute to work with government agencies and the private sector to develop metrics and benchmarks and tests that ensure AI systems are both safe and reliable. And as we've been hearing today, DOE is home to incredible technical expertise, world-class computing infrastructure, valuable scientific data that position the department to be really a leader in all of this AI research and development. Ms. Fu, could you describe how DOE collaborates with NIST and NSF and other agencies, but that collaboration to advance AI safety research, which I think we're getting the cart before the horse here a little bit.
Is it on?
Yes.
Thanks so much for that question. Certainly AI safety and security is of key importance for DOE and for the country. This is something that the AI executive order speaks to. We have been coordinating with Commerce very closely. We are working on an MOU with the AI Safety Institute so that we can bring the expertise at DOE to bear on these questions of AI safety and security. One thing I will note is that our National Nuclear Security Administration has been focused on this issue even before the issuance of the AI executive order because of how important it is to our mission. And they have been doing evaluations of open models and proprietary models for some time now. And we think that there is expertise that we've developed through that process that we hope to bring to bear in our cooperation with the AI Safety Institute. With NSF, we have been working very closely to try and see where we can align some of our workforce efforts. We talked a little bit about that before, about how we can draw the line a little bit more closely between the workforce efforts they're doing at universities all across the country and the resources and training and capabilities we have at our national labs. We also are co-funding a research coordination network on privacy-enhancing technologies because we think that this is an incredibly important field of work that's important to coordinate on.
Of course, absolutely. And I think that there's an opportunity here for the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy to begin to help coordinate all these different efforts, because there does need to be some sort of, the hive mentality has got to be directed properly and coordinated. Dr. Gleason, Colorado's Elevate Quantum recently received an award from the Department of Commerce to expand we feel the nation's leading quantum ecosystem. In Colorado, companies, universities, the workforce are determined and ready to build on this federal investment to create quantum-enabled technology that solves real-world problems in navigation, communications, computing, et cetera. Quantum computers and classical computers are most effective at solving different and distinct problems. So how will DOE bring together the different advanced computing technologies, including quantum and classical computers, to solve the most challenging science and technology questions?
So very good question. It's a very important question. I think what I'll start with is it comes down to heterogeneity of computer systems. So what I mean by that is bringing different computing technologies together to bear that can attack different parts of a problem where they are the most efficient technology to attack that piece of the overall challenge. And I'll just use history as an example. So high-performance computing used to be CPU-focused only. Then they became more heterogeneous by adding GPUs.
Right.
And GPUs are very good at AI, training, et cetera. CPUs good at modeling and simulation. So there's an example of where heterogeneous computing can be used to attack different types of problems in different parts of a problem. I think the future, one of the things that DOE and the national labs are very focused on is what are the next versions of heterogeneous computing that are on the horizon? And you've already mentioned one. We talked a lot about quantum recently and in this hearing. Quantum computers are very good at solving optimization problems, for example. logistics problems. They're very good at simulating molecular dynamics or chemistry because of the nature of the quantum mechanics that are used to drive the quantum computers. So integrating classical HPC with future quantum computers, I think, is a really important thing that the department and the national labs need to look at. And that's a big challenge. How do you integrate these very different types of architectures that run with very different software stacks and software platforms? How do they connect together? How do they communicate? And how do you make a quantum coprocessor, for example, that lives in a data center with a frontier supercomputer and takes on some of these challenging parts of the problem, probably in a more energy efficient way and probably faster? Other technologies, neuromorphic computing is another good example of another heterogeneous option. Neuromorphic coprocessors can also tackle unique challenges. And so, I think there's computational architectures that we haven't even thought of yet. And the Department of Energy is exploring, and the labs are exploring what those might be. But I think increasing the heterogeneity is one really strong path that DU and the labs should follow.
I think we're going to need several more hearings to really explore this thoroughly.
Okay.
On behalf of the chairman, Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Senator King. Thanks to all the witnesses for being here. Dr. Gleason, if I could just start with you, I just want to start with a question about Oak Ridge National Lab. Since you're here from that institution, you've worked there for more than 30 years. Is that right? 34, I think you said in your opening statement. Do you mind if I ask, do you happen to live in the area as well?
I do.
Here's why I'm asking. You're probably familiar with the role of Oak Ridge in the Manhattan Project, I bet. Is that fair to say?
I am, yes.
Could you just give us, for the benefit of those who are watching the hearing, could you just give us a thumbnail sketch of what Oak Ridge did for the country, to the extent that you know it? It doesn't need to be detailed, but just give us a synopsis, what Oak Ridge did for the country during the Manhattan Project.
Yeah, I mean, Oak Ridge, was stood up in the early 40s to try to help build the nuclear material project, and it continues to inform our national security mission part of what we do. We do Office of Science work, we do national security work, but our roots in the Manhattan Project, one of the big areas that came out of that was our material science strength, and we have a huge pillar and strength of material science that its roots go back to that Manhattan Project and Oak Ridge's contributions.
Very good. Thank you for that. I asked because Oak Ridge was such a critical part of the Manhattan Project, as you say, and the Oppenheimer movie of this last year, I think, raised awareness about what that project looked like and how it got started and the importance of Los Alamos. But really, at Oak Ridge, the government produced plutonium, and then there were other uranium processing sites around the country, including in my home state of Missouri, in St. Louis. And as you probably know, in both Oak Ridge and St. Louis, despite the fantastic, vital contributions of those processing plants, facilities, and labs to our national security, the nuclear waste was not properly disposed of in either place. And in Oak Ridge, the effects on the community have been severe. And I just want to quote from one of your fellow residents there in the Oak Ridge area. Tanvi Cardile is her name. She's the coordinator for the Oak Ridge Environmental Peace Alliance, who has said that it is time that people in Oak Ridge receive compensation for being exposed to radiation from nuclear waste. And now Oak Ridge, as we speak, is a Superfund site, and that is good. It's long overdue that it be cleaned up. But not only should it be cleaned up, those folks, your neighbors in the area who've been exposed to nuclear radiation over the years, ought to be compensated for it, just like in the city and region of St. Louis. And I bring all of this up because this body, to its credit, passed legislation that would compensate the good folks of Oak Ridge and the St. Louis area and other similar nuclear sites and other folks who were exposed to downwind testing during the Manhattan era and the Cold War era. We passed that legislation by 69 votes. And I look across the aisle, Senator King voted for that. I appreciate that, Senator, and most of my colleagues. It was a huge vote. It's now in the House of Representatives, and having you here from Oak Ridge, considering everything Oak Ridge and the entire region there that you work at has done for this country, I couldn't let the opportunity pass to thank the good people of Oak Ridge, to thank the scientists that you work with, to thank that community, and also to call on my colleagues in the House to pass this legislation, compensate these good Americans who bore the brunt of our effort in the Second World War and the Cold War. which we won because of the effort of people at Oak Ridge and in St. Louis and in the residents who weren't themselves scientists but lived in the area and have suffered the effects of the nuclear radiation. They're proud to be Americans and to have served in this effort. They deserve compensation, however, just as they deserve to have their communities cleaned up. So thank you, Dr. Gleason, for testifying about the significance of that. Dr. Kaushik, if I could just come to you in my remaining moments here, just about the dangers posed by China and AI. You highlighted in your opening statement, your written statement, the 2017 National Intelligence Law in the PRC requiring Chinese citizens and organizations to share information with state intelligence. Can you just speak to the dangers of American AI companies doing business with China, investing in Chinese AI, partnering with the Chinese businesses, whether overtly state-controlled or not? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sir, thank you for that question. I think it hits right at the heart of the argument on economic security and national security. I think American businesses doing business in the PRC, at one point, our government promoted them to do it. And that's okay. Like, that was our understanding of the PRC back then. Things have changed. And today, if a company goes and invests in China, what they are doing is inherently supporting their economy, inherently supporting an authoritarian regime. They don't know whether what they're investing in is also fueling slave labor in Xinjiang. I think that is an important consideration for any American company who wants to invest in other countries. They have to take that into account. We have to be realistic about what is happening. We cannot live in a dreamland of the China we want to operate with. We do not control that. We control what is the China that we are operating with.
I'm so glad to hear that from you, and I hope that every corporate CEO will listen and take to heart the words you just said. I asked partly because I just had the opportunity to talk with an Intel executive who was testifying at a different committee. Intel, of course, is investing billions in China and in Chinese AI in particular. And this executive argued to me, this was just 48 hours ago, argued to me that this is of great benefit to the United States. There are no security concerns with it at all. It's really good for America. But the telling thing was, you mentioned the Uyghurs, Xinjiang province. He would not condemn the persecution of the Uyghurs. He said, well, I can't speak to that. It's unclear if there really is any forced labor in China. This, I think, is frankly the moral hazard that our companies face. If they do business in China, if they find themselves compromised by the PRC, they run the risk of supporting slave labor, of helping the Chinese AI program in a way that is materially to our detriment, but is also, frankly, just morally wrong. So thank you for your clarity on that. And I just think these companies, these so-called American companies, it's time that they actually did something for the values that we cherish as Americans. And ending slave labor ought to be at the very top of that list. And I frankly am sick of these companies taking billions. Intel is getting billions, $8.5 billion just approved to go to Intel under recent laws that this body has passed. And yet they're turning around and spending billions in China and won't condemn slave labor. In fact, maybe benefiting from it. And I just think that's wrong. I see my time's expired. I have a couple more questions for you, Dr. Kaushik, just about safeguarding our national labs. So I'll give those to you in as written questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We might have a second round too if you could stay. Okay, Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. I want to thank the chairman and ranking member for this conversation. I love this chart, by the way. Thank you. I understand one of my colleagues talked about it, but I'm just going to put a finer point on this because I understand in this conversation just highlights the fact that a rapid increase in projected electricity demand is happening because of AI, because of data centers. And I know this in Nevada because we actually have both happening here, and we are a major hub for data centers. You just have conversations with the Switch in my state on this very topic. So I am very interested in how we address that demand, and I think it is everybody's responsibility to figure this out if we want to lead in this country in emerging technology, right? So if you have any additional information, I would love to hear it on how we address and be a part of the solution here to address that emerging demand as well. Ms. Fu?
Yes, this is something, as I mentioned earlier, something that the department is laser focused on. And I think it is due to our role in leadership in advanced computing, understanding what the energy needs of AI will be, but also in our role with the energy part of our name. We see an enormous opportunity here. It is true that energy demand is growing, it's doubling. Energy demand from data centers is doubling from a very low base. However, it is a local issue that we need to really get our heads around. We think that DOE has a really unique role here in helping to convene stakeholders. This is something that the Secretary has been thinking through. She's charged her Secretary Energy Advisory Board to look at this issue, and they recently came out with recommendations. We'd be happy to share them. We are starting to implement and look through those recommendations and see what we can do. We'll be convening stakeholders around the country in areas of high load growth. This is going to be an effort over the next several months. We do think that there are things that we can do now. And I think part of the challenge with AI load growth is that it is both a very large load and the expectations are very fast. This large load is going to come online in the next through the next few years. And so we have many different kinds of technologies that we're looking at that are going out to 2030. We're doing everything that we can to look at what we can unlock now. Permitting, of course, is one piece of that. We have actually an AI and permitting pilot that we have already launched to see how we can use AI to expedite and streamline the permitting process. And one of the things that we've been able to do is to take the entire corpus of NEPA documents, which normally go in a huge binder and get put on the shelf, and make them AI ready, digitize them and make them available to the entire scientific community and to industry to develop new tools to help with this process. But we know that there's near-term needs, mid-term needs, and longer-term needs, and DOE is focused on all of those.
And I know you are, because of your footprint in Nevada, by the way, and so thank you. My only ask is, and you talked a little bit about, you invite industry in to have them part of the solution. I talk with the CEO of Switch regularly, and I just talked to him about this issue. They have ideas.
Yes.
Right. And so they should be part of this discussion.
Absolutely.
Nevada is a perfect place to have this discussion because of DOE's footprint, but also there is this nexus between energy and water and the challenges we have there. There is also in Nevada a large footprint just of the federal government that should be partnering with state, private sector in figuring this out. And for that reason, I am hoping DOE is also partnering with the Department of Interior. You talked a little bit about permitting, but it's Department of Interior that owns a lot of the land, right? So I'm hoping that, and can you talk about that? Is there that partnership that's happening with other federal agencies, including the Department of Interior?
Yes, there's a lot of focus on this. We're working through the CEQ that's convening the interagency body. I'll say the AI and permitting pilot, we're working with the 13 agencies in the Permitting Council on this issue. And we've recently, through Savannah River National Lab, issued an RFI that looks at potentially siting data centers even on federal land.
Okay.
So we're looking at all of these issues, looking at all of these options. We understand the urgency of the issue.
Okay, and the only other stakeholder that must be at the table is our state and local folks, right? Because we manage our economic development, our population growth, our needs with the federal government because the federal government owns most of the land in the state. So I'm hoping that you pull our folks in as well in this conversation. It is crucial. Thank you. You talked a little bit about workforce that we need for the future. What else should we be aware of here in Congress that we have to focus on, particularly for that workforce of the future that is going to kind of lead and be a part of these emerging technologies? Anything that we didn't talk about that I need to know or we need to know?
Happy to take that on. I think, Senator, that is an incredibly important question that is at the heart of this competition. The population of the PRC is 4 times ours.
Right.
They're producing 4 times as many bachelor degree holders in STEM, twice as many masters, and twice as many PhDs. This is not a competition that we faced in the Cold War. The population of the Soviet Union was nearly as much as ours. The economy was far below. And here, the population's much higher, much more talent to tap into. And they have these sophisticated programs that they're trying to bring more talent into their country, right? I'll give you the example. They have this National Innovation-Driven Development Strategy, which aims for the PRC to become a key hub for global high-end talent by 2050. Now, they've changed their visa and permanent residency programs. They've established a 1,000 Foreign Talents program alongside the 1,000 Talents program to recruit foreign nationals to China. And I think we need to have a talent strategy here. Mm-hmm. What does our talent strategy look like? DOE has some fellowships for U.S. nationals. I think NSF has their own fellowships. agencies have their work cut out here, but at the same time, there is a big chokehold that only this body can solve, and that is that, I'll quote the Singaporean leader, Lee Yuan Koo, who said, when he was asked whether he thought China would overtake the United States in the 21st century, he said no, because the United States has long attracted the world's best and brightest. Said that the United States fosters a diverse culture of creativity, and China will struggle to do so. Despite having 1.3 billion people to tap into, the United States has 7 billion people to tap into, because we can assemble the rest of the world team. And I think you see that in AI today. 65% of the AI startups, of the top AI startups, have at least one person as a founder or co-founder who came here through legal immigration means. I think that has to be an important part of the conversation on workforce. So we need an all-of-the-above approach here to be able to match the numbers that they're putting out in STEM PhDs and STEM masters, STEM bachelors.
And then finally, and I agree, but that can be done, Dr. Kaushik, with what your caution was before, is how do we secure? How do we ensure we're securing the technology, right, for our use in our labs? There's a way to balance it, and you believe that can be done.
Absolutely. There are, the guardrails I talk about, most of them are objectively laid out in what we call the National Security Decision Directive 189, which was issued during the Reagan administration during the Cold War, about protecting American technological advantage. The National Academies also did a report in 2022 at the direction of this body on protecting US technological advantage, and they said that it is possible. Now, what do we need to do to actually get there? I think we have to recognize the competition's a bit different. We cannot continue funding hypersonics research as basic research and saying that we will make that openly accessible. We have to classify the research when it needs to be classified. We have to have that conversation. A risk matrix cannot be a silver bullet. We have to have a broader conversation on what is okay to be made openly accessible and what needs to be behind closed doors, who should have access to certain research and who should not. And I think we need to be very careful about whether it is even people from our partner and allied countries to be able to have access to those, those technologies that we are researching that are of sensitive nature. Research, it's not just about preventing PRC access to those technologies. Sometimes we just don't want the fact that we are developing those technologies disclosed. I think there's a way we can balance that, and we've done. I think NSPM 33 does a really good job at it. It was produced by the Trump administration as an all-of-government approach. The Biden administration, to its credit, has continued working on it, despite OSTP's massive delays in releasing implementation guidance. It is the right approach. The Trump administration also issued the Presidential Proclamation 10043, which bars the entry of certain Chinese graduate and postgraduate students who have ties to military civil fusion institutions. And I think that is taking a scalpel rather than a sledgehammer to this. And that is the right way to go about it.
Okay, thank you.
Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we've been sitting here a few minutes ago, I asked a question of ChatGPT-4. And the prompt was, give me a poem in the style of Robert W. Service about the U.S. Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. Okay? Robert W. Service is my favorite poet. He wrote about the gold rush, cremation of Sam McGee, the shooting of Dan McGrew. Anyway, that was what I asked. In 3 seconds, this is what I can always write. There's no senator from Texas on this committee. The senator from Texas, with a mind on oil's flow, speaks of wealth beneath the earth and profits yet to grow. Now, listen to this. But across the room, a voice rings clear from Maine's wild, rocky shore. There's wind upon the sea, my friend. We must demand much more. The cold fields of Wyoming, the pipelines out of sight, they spar with solar panels shining clean and bright. And as they hash their quarrels out with power in debate, the future of the nation's grid they strive to navigate. Isn't this amazing? This was 3 seconds. Yet all the while, the rivers run, the mountains stand so high, the forests whisper ancient tales beneath the open sky, and those who sit and legislate with duty on their chest know nature's gift is fleeting and they must do their best. So let them weigh the costs and gain let compromise be found. For in the hands of those who lead, the nation's fate is bound. And like the miners seeking gold in service's rugged lore, the Senate digs for answers deep on nature's precious shore. That's what AI can do, which I think was absolutely astounding. But the fact that it made a mistake, I think, is also a cautionary tale. Senator Barrasso was talking about the electricity issue and the coming problems, and that's one of the reasons we're supporting, I don't know if you know, but 2 weeks ago we reported out a comprehensive permitting bill in order to unleash the power, particularly of renewables, because without transmission, we're not going to have those resources. One question on quantum computing and advanced computing. And I don't want to pursue this too deeply, but I want to be sure, Ms. Fu, that we're not duplicating. There are other people in the U.S. government working on this problem, and I just want to be sure that there's coordination, and you don't have to go into any detail, but assure me that you know what's going on in other agencies and that we're doing this, because this is an expensive proposition, that we're not duplicating and overlapping because of competing jurisdictions.
We're not duplicating. We're working closely with the White House National Quantum Coordination Office. We're closely with other agencies on this issue. And I think that what we talked about earlier around AI, and where DOE plays a role is around developing the capability. And so the foundries that we're developing, the test beds, the different kinds of user access programs, these are things that only DOE can do. We work with other agencies to build up the broader ecosystem, but the large-scale science and the facility side of this issue is something that is a DOE strength.
Well, please keep an eye on that issue.
Absolutely.
And in the context of this committee, are there ways that AI can assist us in the more efficient allocation of power, the more efficient running of the grid? There's a lot of inefficiency on the grid today, and we're developing what are called GETs, grid enhancement technologies. I think that a complex system like the grid, and by the way, we need to distinguish between power and the grid, between capacity and the wires. But can AI be helpful to us in more efficiently managing the grid?
It can, and I think just taking it back to the poem that you wrote with ChatGPT earlier, I think that's a really good example. ChatGPT and all of the commercial large language models were trained on human-generated information off the entirety of the internet. And the kinds of things that we're talking about in our FAST proposal is not training on the internet. It's not training on data, human-generated data. It's training on scientific data where we can trust the provenance of that data and it can follow the laws of math or biology or physics. And so when we look at the grid and we look at the things that we are going to need, and that's a very, very high consequence use case. This is lights on or lights off. We need to 100% have trust in where the data is coming from to train this and what.
Assuming it's trustworthy data, my point is analyzing massive data about how the grid is operating will enable us to operate it more efficiently. Is that correct?
Yes, we think that there is a huge use case on using AI to look at how we control massive systems like the electric grid.
Thank you. Final point, and we've touched on this, we just did, Mr. Kaushik. How much talent are we losing because of our not very functional immigration system? And, the quote from Lee Kuan Yew, who's a genius, is very appropriate, but my sense is it used to be a lot of foreign students were coming to the U.S., they'd get a graduate degree from Stanford or Notre Dame or NYU, and they'd stay. Now they're leaving. Now we're making it harder for them to stay. How do we open up this system safely? I understand there's security concerns, but my sense is we're losing a lot of talent.
Certainly, Senator. I think there was a recent study that was done which found that over 50% of AI PhD graduates who leave the country cite that as the reason why they are leaving the country.
Because of the immigration law?
Yes.
So there's a pile of talent who we're chasing away.
Correct. And many of them are from nations which we consider as partners and allies, right? And I think that is something that we have to recognize, that there is a breadth.
So we're doing this not only to Chinese people or Russian people, but we're doing it to Australians or people from France or Germany.
Correct. Yes, Senator.
That's just crazy.
That is totally the case. In fact, the CCP recognizes this, and I'm going to give you some quotes directly from them, where commenting on the U.S. retention of Chinese STEM students, I'll just say, the head of CCP's Central Talent Work Coordination Group complained that the number of talents lost in China ranks first in the world. But now, if you look at their data, granted all the issues in their data, the fraction of the Chinese students who are returning home is increasing. Despite long-term stay rates, like if you look at students from the PRC who graduated from US universities in 2015, over 90% of them are still in the United States. But that number is declining overall. Especially at the undergraduate level, it's declining a lot. State-run consulting firm wrote in an AI policy white paper in China that U.S. restrictions on immigration have provided China opportunities to bolster its ranks of high-end talent.
Brilliant.
So these are direct quotes from the Chinese Communist Party.
I mean, really, shouldn't we, assuming sufficient security analysis, shouldn't we just staple a green card to diplomas?
I think, Senator, that's a worthy consideration. I would say that we do need security provisions attached, like some of the provisions that were under consideration during the Chips and Science Act, for instance, of applying sanctions to people who are found guilty of economic or industrial espionage or academic espionage. I think that is something that we should
deal with that, and that's a small percentage.
Correct.
In terms of gaining a huge amount of talent that will drive this country into the future.
I think what you're saying is absolutely right, and this is what Bill Evanina, who was the former counterintelligence chief in the previous administration, also said, that we bring about 350,000 Chinese students here every year. We have very liberal student visa policies for them. About 1 in 1,000 of them are bad faith actors. And so we need that scalpel-based approach to remove that 1 out of 1,000 rather than shutting the door on all 350,000. And I think that is the right approach that the Trump administration took with its presidential proclamation 10043 and NSPM 33 and the likes. I think there are obviously still a lot of issues that we need to deal with, and that can be done. At the same time, I think it was Senator Cantwell who said during Chips and Science that either we recognize this problem today or we will wake up in 10 years and China will be ahead in everything and we'll have no time to work on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to those of you who have been part of the conversation here this morning. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your leadership and inviting me to join you with the Department of Energy AI Act that we're working to advance to make sure that DOE has the tools that are necessary to really leverage some of the benefits here of AI. I look forward to being able to advance that and also to be supportive of the measure that Senator Daines is introducing, the DOE Quantum Leadership Act of 2024. I think all good measures that just add to the toolbox here. Senator King, I sit in just amazement of what you shared, although I will say that the shooting of Dan McGrew was still one of Robert Service's finer pieces of works, and I think he would have been offended by the hooping it up in the Malamute Saloon. Yeah, we could go on, and I'll regale you with my Robert Service. It's one of my favorites, so you made me smile here this morning. I want to ask a little bit more about application of these technologies. There's been a lot of focus in the committee here on national defense, competitiveness issues, power grid resilience. Senator King mentioned efficiencies. Talk to me a little bit about how we can utilize these technologies in other fields, whether it's resource exploration, disaster prediction, climate resilience, adaptation planning. Let me share with you. I had a meeting just yesterday with some scientists from the Wardwell, what's the name of the board will. Anyway, focused on what they call the permafrost pathways, and it's essentially utilizing available mapping to understand and determine where we have greater vulnerabilities, whether it is with releases of carbon, as we're seeing the permafrost melt, or just the application in whether or not you would even think to put a community or a structure there. And a lot of discussion about where the data is. As scientists, are they able to access the public repositories? BLM does certain analysis, Forest Service in Alaska does analysis. What is available to them, and how would their work be facilitated in other ways? And I think exactly about some of what we're talking about here. The other thing that I will ask you to think about and help me with, we had a deadly landslide in my hometown of Ketchikan just a few weeks ago. This is an area in a neighborhood where my family grew up, had the same house for 60 years, and not in an area that is prone to landslide. And yet, as we're seeing more intense weather, we're seeing these impacts in our communities that are really quite frightening. And so we're asking, what mapping have we done? What monitoring is going on in terms of precipitation? And we're told that, well, at the place that we were at the day of the landslide, the rainfall was somewhere between 6 and 8 inches that day, whereas the weather monitoring station, which is right across, maybe a half a mile away, is less than 2 inches. Still a rainy day. And so we're talking about, we've got these tools that are out here, but who is able to communicate with who? And I'm giving you a rambling, open-ended question, but I've got a lot of problems that we're looking to solve on the disaster side, or just preparedness, awareness, but also with being able to utilize some of the public data that is out there as we're trying to assess, is there greater potential for a critical mineral in this area? And do we need to do the actual drilling, or can we extrapolate from these tools and these technologies? Have at it.
Thank you so much. And these are all super important questions and real application spaces for AI. And I'll just give a few examples of where this might be useful. Climate modeling and environmental research, you mentioned earlier, the ability to look at vast data sets from the Arctic region, including sensor and satellite data to understand permafrost thaw and changes in the ecosystem. This is work that PNNL and Oak Ridge are already engaged in. AI for energy resilience. This is an area where we look at how we can optimize energy systems for remote communities. And we know that NREL is doing quite a lot of work in that space, where we can look at energy demand, plan out where storage should be, reduce dependence on costly diesel fuel. These are things that I think can be very impactful for everyday people. There's also obviously AI for infrastructure monitoring, and this is work that Sandia has underway, looking at AI to monitor critical infrastructure like pipelines and transportation, especially in remote areas where it'll be hard for people to go to regularly. So to your point around data, this is an incredibly important issue. We talked a little bit about what we are doing on AI and permitting data, especially NEPA data, making it AI ready. I think it was millions and millions of pages that we were able to make AI ready so that it could be used more broadly for tools and application development. I think there is an opportunity to do this across this entire spectrum, from climate data, energy data, the whole grid, the grid questions here, and knit them together. And that is part of what we are thinking about through FAST. How do we get all of these different stores of data we collect as well as public data, and make them actually useful? Because I think poems are great, and these tools that we have commercially available today are really great for efficiencies, and they're really great for language. But the kinds of problems that we have are going to be hard scientific problems that will then need to be applied to real world situations.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm thinking about the application. to the Department of Defense. Right now on Alaska's coastline, we have some older military assets that are greatly threatened by what we're seeing with coastal erosion. And you've got to make decisions, expensive decisions about, do we stay there? Do we relocate? And you want to make sure that the decisions that you are making are going to be in place for more than just the next decade. It has to be more long term. So the tools that we have to put in place. Dr. Kaushik, you wanted to?
Sure, Senator. I think that is exactly the kind of work we should be doing at the federal government level, where it's not necessarily like the private sector has incentives to build those kinds of tools. They don't have the data. They don't have the sensitive data. I think, for instance, NOAA collects about like a terabyte of data every day that nobody ever gets to see. I think that is something that we can be doing. But at the same time, there are some private sector actors who are working on this. Like NVIDIA developed a digital twin of the Earth, right? And what that allows them to do is conduct millions of simulations of extreme weather events compared to what we can today do, which is like just about thousands of simulations to see, to better predict the weather. I think another area where I think we need to think about what the national labs could be doing is like the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory is working on this idea called cloud labs, right? We've changed dramatically how we work in every sector since the Industrial Revolution. But science has still stayed the same. You go into a lab, you pipette your chemicals, you do it how you do it. A cloud lab allows you to automate how to do scientific discovery. You can run experiments at scale. They're more replicable. They can be run faster, more precision. And I think same goes with like how do we explore critical minerals? It's a very it's a capex heavy stage at the exploration level. And I think USGS has a program on that where you're using AI along with like radar data to understand better what kinds of materials may be underneath the earth. And I think all of those things, not necessarily the private sector has near-term incentives to invest in or develop. And I think those are the kinds of things that generally people look to the federal government for.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Gleason?
I just wanted to touch on something Helena mentioned, which is the data problem, and you touched on it as well. Making sure that data is AI ready is a huge undertaking. A lot of people underestimate the challenge. You know, you could have a lot of data, but it's not valuable until it's made AI ready. It has to be organized. It has to be labeled in some cases, sometimes not, but it has to be ready to train an AI system. So there's a huge part of FAST, which is to make data AI ready, and public data, scientific data from the national labs, a very important challenge that it's not the most exciting piece of the work, but it's really the most important because data is the fuel for the AI engine. The other thing I just wanted to mention, just as an example, is something we're doing in disaster response and disaster recovery. Is Oak Ridge is stitching together satellite images from across the entire world and then mapping the actual building infrastructure from those images. In fact, to the point where we're predicting some of the materials that those buildings may be made of from the spectral reflections in the information in the satellite image. The cool thing about that is now you can, if you see a disaster, predict a disaster from a climate model or even in a military situation, you can understand what the effects might be. And after it happens, you can do a before and after comparison and decide where do I need to direct my emergency resources most effectively, most quickly to save the most people, restore function, et cetera. So AI is a huge tool to help those kinds of things that are connected to some of the things you mentioned earlier.
On behalf of the chairman, the distinguished former governor and current senator from the state of North Dakota.
Thanks, Governor. Appreciate it. Thanks to all the witnesses for being here. My question for all of you is, there's probably a lot of metrics we use to measure AI, what are the most relevant metrics? For example, if we're saying, okay, how do we compare to China or someone else in terms of where we are with AI? What are the metrics that we use to measure who's ahead and why it matters? And then my second question is going to be, how do we really manage the security, not only for ourselves, but how do we address the security issue for others that are developing AI, be it China or anyone else? And, you've got this great workforce and you get them, all trained up on this stuff and they develop it. And I'm guessing there's a lot of folks in a lot of other countries that decide they want to hire them and are offering some pretty big wages and so forth to have them come over. And it may be for malign purposes. So first, the metrics, how you measure them, why it's important, and then the security aspects both for us here and for our adversaries, and particularly regarding the workforce that you're developing and training.
Thank you so much for that question. These are all things that we are thinking very deeply about at the Department of Energy. On metrics, the AI executive order refers to how much power is used to train the model, or flops. So in the AI executive order, it refers to 10 to the 26th as the amount of power that's used to train some of the most powerful models that are here today. Now, is power, or the amount of money that you spend to train a model, a good metric for capability?
That's just an input.
It's imperfect. It's imperfect, and we recognize that. And I think what we are doing at the department across the interagency as well is thinking about what other ways of identifying model capability there are. I mean, one way to look at it is the data that's used to train the models. It's not always the size that counts, it's how useful that model is. And I will point to work that's underway across many of the national labs, but work that we're doing on red teaming of open source as well as proprietary models through our National Nuclear Security Administration. This is an area of intense work where we're pairing our data scientists with our experts in radiological and nuclear expertise to really understand how capable some of these models are relative to each other. And that's work that we hope to bring to the work of the AI Safety Institute to help inform that effort. More broadly around the workforce issues, I think this is incredibly important. We have a managed research environment within the DOE National Labs to look at risk across a continuum. Of course, for classified work, we have extreme restrictions on that. We have a science and technology risk matrix that looks across different areas of critical and emerging technology, and we use that to help guide who works on what kinds of projects. We also screen foreign nationals who come into the labs. Now, to your point of, well, once they're in the labs, and what if they leave? What if they take that knowledge, the training, and go somewhere else, to industry or elsewhere? And I think that is part of the U.S. open ecosystem. We can't control where people go. We can take measures while they're in our system. And I think it calls for why the capabilities that we have at DOE attract talent from all over the world, because they're unique facilities. They're unique. We have people at the labs who come to the United States because of that facility, because of that supercomputer, or because of that neutron source. And the investments that we are making at DOE and our national labs continue to keep that center of gravity and that center of gravity for talent here in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that, China or somebody else could actually want to develop people that come here and train under you, learn everything you've got, all your advanced technologies, and go back home and make sure that they're have access to all that information and everything else and that capability.
So I would say we are extremely clear-eyed about those threats, and that's why we have a managed research environment. That's why we work very closely with our Office of Intelligence and Counterintelligence. We have our eyes wide open to those things, and that's why we focus on where people have access to even when they come to the lab, the kind of research that they're focused on, the kind of access that they have at the National Lab. It is not a free-for-all once they come through. We have ongoing efforts underway. We have training. People understand what those risks are, and there's an ecosystem around our labs to make sure that we are managing those risks properly.
Are you seeing people leave and go to other countries?
I mean, we are seeing people leave and go to other companies. There is really a competition for talent in these areas of critical and emerging technology. If you speak to companies, they will say they can't hire enough people to do that. And I think if you talk to our national labs, they will say the same. I think the things that attract people to DOE are our mission and the access to the kinds of resources that we have. But that leadership is not assured. That leadership is not assured. And other companies are paying quite a lot more than what DOE national labs are paying. But people come to us because of the mission work that we do.
Right.
Just as a leader of a few organizations where I've tried to hire and retain talent across these emerging technologies, it's a big challenge. Recruiting, we need to increase our domestic workforce, the supply. In terms of retention, my personal experience is we've lost less to other countries. I can't even think of specific examples, but we lose a lot to industry. And I'd rather lose to industry in the U.S. that's creating new AI technology that'll advance the cause of the United States. But it is a challenge. And as Helena said, the ones that stay at the national lab for the long haul are the ones that are motivated by the mission. They love the lab mission, and they love to work at a place where they can explore science and technology objectively without a profit motivation, which is a good motivation, but that's not why you come to the national lab. So I just wanted to echo what she said. Our challenge is recruiting domestic talent with citizenship, U.S. citizenship in the STEM fields. So one thing Oak Ridge is doing a lot, and other labs are doing this as well, is engaging in middle school, in high school. By the time they get to college, you're almost too late, right? Because they've already decided their path. But having our scientists go mentor at local schools to try to encourage young men and women to enter STEM fields, because we have such a huge shortage of that. So I think that's a big thing we need to focus on.
Mm-hmm. I'll just add to that, Senator, on the question around metrics. I think no metric will give you a perfect picture. Every metric is targeting a different conversation. Like when you look at papers, you're asking about who's ahead in more basic research. When you're looking at commercialization, how many users are using iFlyTech's AI in the PRC actually outpaces how many people are using AI in the United States. But at the same time, nobody can dispute that the capabilities of our frontier AI model providers, whether it's OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, and all those, are indisputably in the lead. That said, their development of DeepSeek, which used to be, by the way, a financial firm, a bank in China, which the Chinese government said, you have to work on AI now. And now they're churning out so amazing models. They actually publish all their results, and you can see their results are actually very competitive to our models. You look at Huawei's new AI chip, which outperforms NVIDIA's A100 on several metrics. So there are an aggregate of statistics is what we probably need to be looking at here, an aggregate of metrics. I think on the talent side, I think the labs are really great at recruiting mission-driven, focused people. At the same time, you can put, you can have all the fancy knives in a restaurant. If you don't have the Michelin star chefs, you're not going to make a good meal. And I think that's the challenge the labs have to deal with.
Thank you to all three of you.
Thank you, Senator Daines. Chairman Manchin, thank you. And thanks for holding this hearing on my bipartisan Department of Energy Quantum Leadership Act, which will reauthorize and strengthen DOE's programs under the National Quantum Initiative. In 2018, this committee and Congress passed the National Quantum Initiative Act in order to focus research, development, and commercialization of the next generation of high-powered computing. That bill has been very effective in spurring quantum research in the United States and in Montana. Since passage, Montana has seen a surge of economic development and jobs surrounding the quantum supply chain. The smartest people want to find the best places to also live and work, and Montana fits that bill. In fact, Montana now boasts over 50 companies and 1,200 employees focused solely on quantum and photonics. Montana State University is home to the Monarch Quantum Foundry, which focuses on quantum materials research. Although, and through my CHIPS and Science Act, Montana hosts the Headwater Technology Hub focused on smart photonics, which is a key component in the future of quantum technology. Simply put, and you may not be aware of this, it's Montana right now. We are helping lead the world in quantum and photonics, which is why I'm proud to say we have strong support from Montana and other national leaders to reauthorize the DOE Quantum Initiative, including the Montana Photonics and Quantum Alliance, Montana State University, Montana Chamber of Commerce, the Energy Sciences Coalition, the Quantum Industry Coalition, the Quantum Economic Development Consortium, and, in fact, many more. Chairman Manchin, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the many letters of support I've received for the DOE Quantum Leadership Act.
You want to answer on that?
I need a yes.
Yes.
Thank you. It's who you know in this business, isn't it, Joe? Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Senator Manchin, Chairman Manchin. Anyway, thank you.
Still Joe.
And it's still Joe. I'm still Steve, too.
I know.
We must continue to focus our energy on developing the best technology and leading the world in quantum research. And this starts with passing my bipartisan bill. So I want to thank Chairman Manchin for adding those letters into the record and his partnership and support of this as well. And I yield back my time to the chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Can you wait a second? One second. I'll see. Okay, go ahead. I'll see. Okay. No, I want to make one. Okay. First of all, before I adjourn, and thank you all for a great job, and it was really wonderful. Just so much to do here. I want to make clarification on. I know I put you all on the spot. I wasn't asking you to basically disparage on our sister NSF. What I was asking is, for the record, we wanted to avoid duplication when we did the CHIPS and Science Act. At the highest of DOE and the labs, and intended to do the same with AI and other emerging, we were trying to avoid that duplication. And DOE, the labs, we were working in that on their behalf. I want to make sure that we have that balanced approach, and we're not robbing from Peter to pay Paul and trying to reproduce the same thing again. And dual application, I don't think any Democrats or Republicans want that to happen. So with your assurances that's not happening, and you have the resources, and you're working with the NSF to try and have a balanced approach, what they do and can do best for you to support what you're doing, and vice versa is what we're trying to make sure happens. And we just don't want you to think you have to be muffled on this if you want to speak out. This is a place to do it. But with that being said, I believe that this hearing demonstrated consensus that we need to continue investing and in leading these emerging technologies in a way that leverages DOE's assets to avoid reinventing the wheel, as we've said, or duplicating between agencies. We work to avoid duplication in CHIPS and Science Act, and behest of DOE and labs intend to do the same here in AI. We also agree on the need to secure the research from foreign espionage, and I believe that Senator Barrasso and I prepared a solid bipartisan compromise with the Intelligence Committee to do just that in DAA, which will complement our efforts in this committee. It's a scalpel approach that protects our critical research while continuing our labs to leverage the best scientific minds in the world. We're concerned about not only the espionage that goes on, but also people that are working within, and we're training them to use it against us. But we understand the delicate thing you have to work with in a freedom-loving country that we are, in a democracy that we rule ourselves under. So members will have until close of business tomorrow to submit additional questions for the record, and the committee stands adjourned.